welcome everybody to another edition of Hot Program. I'm your host with the most, all the way from the East Coast, and as always, good people. I am in airplane mode, and now a man whose introduction was so controversial he no longer has an introduction. A man who needs no introduction. How you doing today, my one black friend?
I'm really grateful I don't need an introduction. I'll tell you that. I'm
That's
doing
right.
okay, Pocket Locker. I'm gonna try to reach out to my realtor today to give her some ideas for selling my house because it's been on the market for a while now and it's still not sold. If any of you want to live in Southern California and you want a really nice place, you can
Have
buy
they
mine.
considered getting rid of the tariffs, raising the minimum wage, and I don't know. I just feel like if they could just fix the economy real quick, that would probably help. That would
You
probably.
know, I talked to quite a lot of people about the tariffs because they affect what I do in my day-to-day work. Um, I do think at some point the tariffs will be ruled unconstitutional, though technically they may not be, but they may be ruled unconstitutional, and people would get, sorry, companies, hear me out, companies will get a rebate. So they'll get their money back. Prices will not go down. And the best that will be done for the consumer is they'll get like a $2,000 tax credit. That's
That
it.
sounds
And
like a dystopian nightmare,
it'll
but I
be
don't think
one
it's gonna
time.
happen. I
It'll be
I
one
think we're just
if
yeah. I think if any, I think the best we could do is the next person just maybe gets rid of them, but I don't. I just don't. I don't see any. I don't see enough spines. I don't see enough spines amongst the
no.
current batch of elected officials. But yeah, that would be interesting. Let's get into today's topic because this already might be uh, multi-parter. This is I think a really important conversation, and yeah, it's just going to be really interesting. So we're going to be reviewing Lurie Daniel Favors talking about the dangers of black Christianity in a white Christian nationalist America. And I think they have a very historically informed perspective. So this should be interesting. But yeah, let's get into it because there's a lot here. Thanks to everybody for joining us. Good to see people in the chat. PC's here. Kyle's here. Jenna's in the house. Good to see you, Jenna. Uh, I always mess this up. X Zarev Valk. Oh god, I'm terrible. I don't know. You got to tell me how to pronounce that. I just call him X because I don't know how to pronounce it. Hey Dave, good to see you. Good to see you. Hope you're feeling good and everything, man. Good to see you here, Dave. All right, let's go ahead and jump into this. Cheers, everybody.
Just wanted to set the tone, because I know some of you are curious about the title. And the title of today's live is Beware the Dangers of Today's Black Christianity in a White Nationalist America. And we're going to talk a lot about that today. But first things first, Black communities realizing that, wow, Republicans really don't like your Black ass. And not that we had to realize it, we kind of knew it. But I'm saying it that way because there is a growing segment of Black Christians out there who are making themselves more publicly known. And they are they're siding on right-wing white Christian nationalism. And so we are going to have that conversation. But before we get there, I want to talk about.
Yeah, there's even for those that have not seen it, maybe not following as much Black content creators or in Black spaces, but there's even been a lot of people saying, "Don't be so Black that you're anti-Christian." Or really that, so don't be so Black that you're anti-Christ. So it's really what she's talking about is really going on, and it's really kind of wild, the things that people are saying, and of course it's all prompted by their responses to the Charlie Kirk shooting.
Wait,
All the things
that
that are
reminds me. Wait, now we can't broadcast. There's something Pocket Locker and I can't broadcast. Remember that tweet that I shared with you
Oh
from Blair
yeah,
White? Yeah, you can't broadcast that. I wish we could. Um, the government has finally succeeded in making everyone afraid of each other in this country. So I don't know
yeah.
what good that's for, but here we are.
Here we are.
happening with the
Not that
Black
you shall
community,
rush to
because
see
this is
Blair
not a
White
call out
tweets.
to anybody. This is a call in, because I believe, as someone who was raised in a Black church, that we have access to one of the greatest forms of spiritual power. Not the greatest form of spiritual power, because everybody has spiritual power. And considering Christianity is one of the newest religions on the planet, it just seems a little pretentious to me to act like it's the best of all of them. But I believe that we have access to spiritual power through the Christian concepts and
Now
ideas.
this is where all of this gets so weird to me. I just don't understand the the like cognitive dissonance of like I don't understand people who get so critical of the church and the religion and what's going on, but they've never stopped to think maybe all this is bullshit. And this is real. It's really hard, because it's that thing where you're stuck between a rock and a hard place, when you're just like, oh, this is such a great informed take, and then you're like, oh, but you're really, you're doing the Black Christian reclamation thing, this thing where we're going to reclaim this like true Christianity that's pro-Black and uplifts Black people and recognizes Black spirituality and gives Black people power, and it's just
And if we use that power, however, in the furtherance of white Christian nationalism, in the furtherance of white supremacy, then you are not, my friends, a Nat Turner or a Gabriel Prosser or a Denmark Vesey kind of Christian. You a white Christian. We got to have the difference and the distinction. But let's talk about what Republican Christians are doing to Black people right now, according to the Washington Post. And it's weird to be reading from the Washington Post.
hey
I don't even think the
Kyle.
Washington Post has any full-time Black reporters anymore. They just fired Karen Attia, who was a phenomenal reporter, and they fired her because she dared to actually quote Mr. Kirk and posted a blue sky, a blue, I don't know what you call him on Blue Sky. I think they started out calling him Skeets. I don't think that went too far. But she basically posted on Blue Sky a quote from Charlie Kirk, one of the many quotes that are available, and she was fired from the Washington Post. Now, what's weird about that is if you are writing about Charlie Kirk or anybody, and you're not using their actual commentary, you're not using direct quotes, that is considered an incomplete article. It's an incomplete paper. If they have an abundance of material available, why would citing them as a reporter be problematic? That's a conversation the Washington Post is going to have internally, but they probably won't, because they are now headed up by white nationalists, and they seem to be very comfortable there. But they did put out this article, so there's that. And this is an article that is entitled "Black Communities Shaken by Trump Cuts Feel Left Behind Again." And this was the result of an analysis that the Washington Post engaged in that found 22 projects had been negatively impacted, projects that were directly related to the interests of Black people. And so I'm inviting us all in to take a look at this because we got to be clear about what time it really is.
See, the thing that gets so lost in all of this is Black people not understanding that this is what Christianity is. It is not a perversion of Christianity. It is not a mistaken Christianity. It is not a lost Christianity. Christianity, at least in these here United States and in Europe and now throughout the world, is about the establishment of an order, and that is an establishment of an order that is dominated by white people. That is what it is. I mean, at this point, Christianity is really just, to me, an instrument of white supremacy. It really, honestly, to me, serves very little other purpose. And I really do believe that people who believe it are just, they're suckers, they're marks, they're losers. I'm sorry. Like they've been hoodwinked, they've been bamboozled, they've been gotten. Okay. And now they have done, and it's Stockholm syndrome. They have come to identify with their oppressors. They have come to identify with the people that are really don't have their best interest in mind. And they've made it their whole personality over something that is really just evidence of severe cognitive impairment. Again, I don't know if it's just this one little shot I poured in this glass, or if it's just my current situation, or what it is, but for some reason I've just been very unfiltered lately. I'm just trying to speak my truth, and I just, it's always going to be frustrating to me when people don't see the possibility that they've been lied to. And it's why I don't support a more progressive Christianity, because, I just can't get with the lies and the BS. And so it hurts me to see somebody so critical, almost there, really capable of a high level analysis, but in the end, their emotional and social commitments have them in a place where they can't really help because they can't really leave. Their solution to the problem is more of the problem, because we have to be clear that that's where these people would lead us. Like if I asked her, like, what, you know what I'm saying? Like, where does this really go to her? It isn't Black people leave the church. It isn't let's go public with the fact that Christianity isn't true. Let's pull our people out of the cult. It's like, no, don't buy into the white supremacist version of Christianity, which is, by the way, the only version of Christianity that's legitimate, the only version of Christianity that's ever going to get anywhat close to power. And it is this sort of official version. So then what happens is instead, let's do this delusional fake Black Christian thing where we're progressive and we're, I guess, race conscious Christians, and then you're just living a lie. So that's it's y'all could tell my flabber is completely gasted, as Uncle Bobby would say.
Completely so.
But this stuff, I find it, I just find it very triggering. And I'm going to tell y'all something else that has just been on my mind lately. This is where we get into these consent issues. This is a young, intelligent Black woman who, I shouldn't say young, she could be my age or older. But, an educated person who I could tell is very intelligent, but, doesn't have the strength of character or the awareness or whatever it is to really get themselves out of this. And it really does hurt us because it comes with so much. I was having a conversation with my students in class, and we were talking about some of the early pivotal figures in sociology. And we added some stuff to the lesson on the development of sociology about how those people in particular felt about women. And, you know, surprise, surprise, most of these old white men had very problematic views of women. Their place was in the church, the kitchen, child rearing or making clothing. They only contributed to society if they were in nurturing roles like mothers or nurses, or, you know, they were really inferior as a result of their gender in their biology, not really as a result of society and things like that. The only one who was kind of decent was Marx, who said, you know, women are sort of in an inferior place and they're intended to be exploited by the system, but that they should be treated as equals to men. So anyway, I'm trying to have a conversation with my students, especially the women students, about how does that make you feel, right? And I use the example of me constantly being told as a black man that the heroes of my democracy and liberty were these founding fathers, most of whom are slave masters, right? Like, and so it's very difficult to constantly being told that these founding fathers were so brilliant and they understood all of our challenges and problems when they didn't even see somebody like me as a human. And so I'm asking my female students, like, how does that make you feel as a young student in sociology, that these are the people you're being told are like these foundational figures in sociology, but this is how they think of women? And, you know, we had a very great, enthusiastic conversation about this in my classes, and my students really had tremendous insights. But one of the things that did come out of that conversation was that I have religious students in my class. And for those students, they see a natural order and a natural hierarchy. And that hierarchy is God, then men, then women, then children, then the rest of, you know, creation or whatever. And so you're in a situation where you're trying to highlight these exploitative attitudes about women. You're trying to empower your female students to be able to think critically about all of this. And it breaks your fucking heart to see a college student who's a woman of color talk about she's not as good of a man, and so actually she doesn't disagree with the take of these you know, historical figures on the role of women. So the self-appointed oppression, the idea that now they've internalized it, and so now she sees it as her view of the world. And I gotta respect that, because I'm a professor, and my students enter the classroom wherever they enter the classroom, right? So it's not a judgment or a dislike of that student or anything like that. But it did break my heart to be like, man, like what I consider to be an impressive ideation of this hierarchy. And I don't think there is a God to establish that hierarchy, and I don't think nature reflects a superiority of men in any way, shape, or form. So to me, this is just a false idea. And it's a false idea that's harmful to women. But because of the ubiquitousness of this religious ideation in our community, it is internalized to the point that black women actually feel that this is their idea, that their inferiority to men is their idea. And so this is the type of stuff where I just don't understand how people can keep playing with this stuff, especially people that are not believers. Like I really don't understand how you could be aware that this is the mentality of people and think that that is something to play with. And I feel like if I really push this young lady on certain things, you know, it's like I might be afraid of what she might say she believes about certain things.
I just based on what you said, the analogy that comes to mind is a group of people are sitting around playing a card game, let's say Texas Hold'em. While they're playing the card game, they're talking about a completely different subject, say cooking. Okay. maybe they get on the topic of cooking a particular dessert that they've all had, that they've all prepared, and they get really excited about it. But somebody always goes back to the game, right? This was great that we had a chat about that, and now back to the game. We all know the rules to the game. We all have to stick by the rules to the game. And as long as we're playing Texas Hold'em, that's where we are, so to speak. There are all these other wonderful things that could exist, but we go back to the game. I
Yeah,
think that's probably
yeah,
to some degree what's at play. Uh, in the company I work at, for those that don't know, I come from the entertainment industry. Well, now I'm working in manufacturing. Big difference. Big difference. Lots of them. And I could have bold ideas where I came from, and a lot of implementing those things when they were appropriate was up to me. I've come into an environment where they've already had almost every idea I've presented since I've been there. And for the most part, they've already decided not to go in that direction. I constantly hear, "Oh, we tried that. We did that. This here's an example of why that won't work again and again and again." And my boss still encourages me. He goes, "Don't stop bringing in ideas." The fact is, this is an established company. It's been here a while, and we're trying to stay in this niche in manufacturing. We're not really trying to go out there. We don't mind expanding, but we want to expand in here. Um, a lot of issues in society aren't going to be resolved by bringing in ideas that don't necessarily apply to whatever process you're trying to change. Some of them can. When we consider the fact that we have a text in the Constitution that talks about freedom, but it was written by people who, some of which, who knowingly owned other human beings and had no intention of setting them free. You have to realize that the game is rigged. It doesn't mean that we can't have amendments which change the game over time. But you
yeah.
have to consider where it came from. There's a lot of rooting out, and it is not done. The rooting out is not done.
Yeah, and
And
it's
there will be those who try to be regressive and go back because they want power, they want control,
yeah, but
just to make their
it does
lives that
reveal that
much better.
it does reveal that it's always been a game, and that this is, I hate to say this is the inherent world of white men, and we're all living in it, and we all still do it. We are all still allowing white men,
I,
and I got to say
I
this.
can't agree. I think it's more power than ethnicity.
No, no, I agree with that, but what I'm getting at is a lot of what I think people are doing is they're playing the white man's game. Even the people that are not themselves white men, like by legitimizing these ideas, even like her, like by her doing her whole thing about there is real spiritual power, there is real God, there is, there is this real thing that we can be doing as black people to unleash our spiritual power. There's all this stuff we could really be doing as good black, right? That's what I mean. That's what I mean about playing into the world of white men, not
Yeah.
recognizing that that has always been a game, that that game has always been set up to benefit white men, and that they have always then been able to use language and culture and all of these other things to get the people that basically their power struggle oppresses to go along with it by treating it like all of these things are happening in good faith. That is, and that I say, but this is a huge part of the issue with atheists and the issue with people on the left is that we are so concerned and we're so worried that the people who are literally again oppressing and opposing us, that they might be sincere. So we can't actually really oppose them. We can't really push them around. We can't really be forceful in our rebuke of their faith and their practices. Why? That again, that's what I mean about to your point about not recognizing that the game is rigged, about not recognizing that we're putting other people's falseness, we're putting other people's fairy tales and delusions on a par with our truth, our lived experience, and our real fight. And who does that benefit? And I just think there's so many aspects and elements of society where people do not realize that that's the case. And I hate to say it, but yes, a lot of the system we have set up was set up to benefit white men. That they were the only people fully, specifically.
I think it's rich landowners who happen to be white. Again, I don't.
But they weren't going to be. But to be clear, they couldn't be anything other than white, and they couldn't be anything other than men
at that time.
But even now, you have to remember, because this is the problem with black elitism and black, and this is the conversation we're having amongst black people. Black billionaires are not part of the club, because black billionaires are still black. Now, they might be part of the oppression because they're going to reinforce the status quo, and they themselves might be enemies of black people. They themselves might be enemies of the marginalized in terms of how they move and how they operate, but they're also still going to be excluded from the club because, again, their blackness will always trump whatever economic status that they have. And we see this with the ways in which even, let's say, a powerful black celebrity billionaire is treated when they get in trouble, not only by the legal system, but also by society and the court of public opinion, versus how rich white billionaires are treated when they're involved in the same crimes and same activities. It's a night and day difference, because there's still a bloodthirst that people have to see black people go down, to see black people get what they deserve, to see black people get justice, to see black people get punished for their crimes. And then again, same thing with Charlie Kirk. Okay, if a powerful black person with that type of access and resources in history had died, okay, a person who was, maybe even a very conservative black Christian or whatever, but said a lot of those things, that person would have been demonized and tossed in the dustbin of history. Whereas Charlie Kirk got lionized, and we're gonna have a holiday for him, and he was such a great American hero and all of this stuff. So I'm just saying, we all have to wake up to the realities of the white supremacist world we've been living in, and the white supremacist world that we've, in a sense, we've helped to create and maintain, because we were groomed in this society. And so we literally have had to learn the tools of our liberation under conditions of oppression, right? So your oppressor is always going to try to make sure you don't figure out how to free yourself, that you don't really get what you need so that you could sustain yourself. And so it's not necessarily our fault. The system is set up so that we won't find our voices and become effective. But I do think it's important that we recognize that that's what happened. And I'm gonna land on one other thing before I get us up, which is, you see it in the notion of loving your enemy. And I've actually seen it now. I wish we covered it. It's kind of, it's in a video I think I have, but it's not one we're talking about today, where basically you have so many liberals who, when push comes to shove, will explicitly go to the phrasing of, well, this is what it means to love your enemies, and this is what it means to love your enemies. You got to love your enemies. It's a perfect example of the type of thing people on the left, people that are secular, people that are ostensibly on the right side of history. It's an example of when we've been so programmed by the people that are oppressing us that, again, we use their framing, their language, and their ideas to fight against them. And of course it doesn't work, because they're the ones who set that whole thing up. And the reality is, you can't love your enemies. You shouldn't love your enemies. And it is a sign of self-hatred to love your enemies. But again, people are not taught that that is not the meta language of our society. The meta language of our society is, whether you're a Christian believer or not, you should have the Christian Protestant, again, white supremacist serving ethos of loving your enemy. That way your enemy can continue to oppress you and step on your neck, but all you're allowed to offer them in return is affection and you know, hushed tones and kind words. All right, I'm gonna let's let her go. She's getting to her good
Remember
stuff.
how I would say in the years leading up to 2024, I need all of us to imagine what would happen if the people who have access to power and the people who control the resources decide that at some point they're not going to give us no more. This is what that looks like. So according to the report, the Trump administration has ended 24 projects that address health and environmental issues in Southern Black communities.
Hang on, y'all know me and Sumami got to get our work in together, because Sumami is always just coming through the chat and then just contributing stuff, maybe more so than the host. She said they think they're going to benefit in the end, but only the rich boys who own capital and land get the goodies at the end of the game. So I want to touch on this real quick, because I did say that this is the conversation that's happening in marginalized spaces, particularly in Black spaces, in terms of Black politics. And let me be very clear that this has a long history, and it ties not just into Black conversations about economics, but also Black conversations about politics. So for instance, you know, the real conversation between, let's say, sincere Black conservatives and more progressive people. But basically, there's always been this notion in Black communities, in Black culture, that we needed Black economic success, that we were going to capitalism our way out of our oppression. That number one, us becoming economically successful would show people our sort of viability as citizens, and at the same time, it would make us more sustainable so that we were not so relying on a government that hates us. However, the counter to that conversation has been really the understanding that capitalism itself, especially as practiced in Europe and America, has always been a racist system. You know, some of these real critics think it's even inappropriate to not call it what they feel it is, which is that it's race-based capitalism. And so the capitalist venture will always be oppressive. And furthermore, it will always, for these critics, be the case that Black people have to essentially betray Black interest in order to even achieve that type of economic viability, right? So you see this in terms of most Black people either becoming exploitative or officially sort of doing business, you know, in white spaces, because again, that's where the resources are. But to Sumami's point, and to where a lot of the especially sharp modern critique of Black capitalism really is what Sumami sort of hinted at, which is that in reality, it goes back to who owns it. And so in a sense, Black excellence and Black economic viability through capitalism has always been sort of a myth and a fool's errand, because again, to a lot of these critics, there's really no such thing as Black capitalism. And the reason is because you have to chase things back to where the money goes. And ultimately, money goes back to the land, it goes back to the bank, it goes back to these serious financial institutions. So even when you're putting your money into a Black business, when you go a Black-owned business, when you get into, you know, where that Black-owned business gets its supplies from, who are they doing the real estate with, what bank are they using, all of these sorts of things, you'll realize that it's sort of not really possible, at least for most people in most situations, to truly have a Black-owned business where you could really say that it's driving dollars that are then staying in Black institutions or in the Black community. So for those people, again, it has been, not to say that we still live in a capitalist society. My one Black friend is trying to sell his house. I'm trying to make sure I don't get booted out of my apartment, right? And we both need money to do what we have to do, but we still can understand that the system was not designed for us, and that even when we have success within that system, or we need to further ourselves within that system, we can still have the critical understanding that that system was not designed for us, and ultimately will not serve us. So that is really where a lot of the critique, y'all, is coming from, is to say that yes, it's important that Black people have economic opportunities, but in the long run, we still need to be vehemently anti-capitalist. And that then is where people get into the agenda of saying, to really be progressive, to really be liberal, to really be whatever these things you want to be, you got to support the Black agenda, because when you get with what is economically necessary to make Black people viable, that's the rising tide that lifts all ships. And so I just wanted to put that out there. So thanks, Umami. That was a comment that really triggered a lot of things I wanted to say. Go ahead, my one Black friend, if you want to get in here, or you want me to just press the... Okay,
go right ahead. Yeah, just
appreciate you.
And basically, rural Alabama counties, for example, lost a $14 million grant that was going to upgrade sanitation systems. You remember when I told y'all about the poop fields and how there are some people who have pipes and sanitation that is so terrible that it literally floods their backyards with sewage, with feces. You might have a feces pool going from your front door till you get into your driveway to get into your car. This was something that we had talked about a lot, because this is a result of aging infrastructure. Infrastructure is a resource, and unwillingness to invest in fixing that aging infrastructure. Now, white communities that have this problem are getting their issues addressed because they're white, and white racist people are in control of the resources. But according to the report, Black ones aren't. And a historically Black Virginia neighborhood is also losing out on a $20 million grant to stop severe flooding. So when your communities are severely being flooded and you had money that was given to you by government, by the Democrats, let's be clear, let's call it out, to stop that severe flooding, what you supposed to do now that the severe flooding is going to continue to happen because the Republicans took it back because they're racist and anti-Black? And if you're a Black Republican, I love you. I would encourage you to give us a call and let us know how you interpret these topics and stories, because as Black Republicans,
see that's it right there. And I don't even think in our current society we'd even think twice about that. And it's very Christian coded, right? I'm looking at a Black Christian woman, she's cool. And so what is the vibe? Hey, to our Black conservatives out there, hey, we love you, but this is a call in. We're trying to call you in. Right, but that's weird, and honestly, I would say probably not true. If I really could press her on how she really feels about these people, she probably has very strong antagonistic feelings to them, like I do. But yeah, but there's this way in which that's what we have to say, right? We have to say, hey, I love you, even though I'm making a YouTube video about how fucking awful and terrible you are, and how you're basically Uncle Tomming for the oppressor. But I love you, right? So it's weird that that's where we're at. And now that I'm aware of it, it bothers me. Like, I don't say that. I'm not going to go telling people I oppose that I love them. That's weird to me.
Is it in a way, pocket locker? It's clear. Jesus says, you're supposed to love those who would oppress you, right? He says this. He says such a thing. So if she is being sincere, not joking, not being sarcastic, not being ironic, if she is indeed sincere, she is doing what Jesus was commanding people to do. Now,
yeah, and I think that good.
Well, so if she's doing it, that is supposed to, I guess, how would I refer to sort of the methods of Jesus? Sort of like a soft hammer. The way to, and they exist, by the way, soft hammers exist. It is a way to gently get the world to change rather than the iron fist getting it to change. What the biblical authors of the New Testament sought to do to some degree is make the world a better place through their methods, and not just for them. they thought the end was coming. I mean, that's clear when you read Paul and even the words of Jesus in Revelation. They're expecting that stuff to happen in their lifetimes. It's not like now where people still expect it to happen in our lifetime, present day. But clearly, they can look in the rearview mirror and say, wow, for nearly 2,000 years, people have been saying this. And I would say, oh, no, 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 no. Longer than that, since before Jesus ever came along. If you reread that Bible, you see they think that it is imminent, that God's going to come down here and start fixing stuff with his toolkit more than 2,000 years ago. But to our Christian listeners, Christian audience out there somewhere, it is up to us nowadays, not us alone atheists, but all us people. If we want to make the world a better place, and I will quote JFK, it will seem out of context, but I swear to you, it's not. On this earth, God's work must be our own. Now, he was
That's humanism.
yeah, exactly. So reportedly, he was a Christian, but that is one of the most atheistic things I have heard in my life. Like, yeah, atheists, this is up to us. It's not up. We can't wait on God to do it. We have to do it.
Yeah.
And in my view, wouldn't God sign off on that if there was one? Wouldn't he say, by all means, dear children, get to work?
Well, I guess he'd have to,
Love each
because
other, be kind to each
apparently
other, feed the starving, heal the sick, go on.
he's a non-interventionist, so he'd have to say, I free will or whatever the blase and the flavonoids is. I take a hands-off approach, because he's always left it to us. So if he was being honest, yeah, that's what he'd have to say. If there was this God out there, he'd have to come down and say, listen, clearly, when something goes down, I don't get involved. If you haven't noticed, so y'all gonna have to, get in the room. Somebody take notes, and y'all gonna have to figure this out, because I'm not coming down to help you. But yeah. I want to say this about the whole thing.
There's an Etta James song that kind of speaks to
I think it's really important. This is the brainwashing, and this is exactly why it doesn't work. And so let me be clear about what I'm talking about here, y'all. I think she likely is sincere. And I think there's a lot of sincere believers out there. And I think for those sincere believers, they really do understand their faith through this figure of Jesus in radical love and, his association with the marginalized. And they buy that, right? And to me, that's the problem, because that is also us buying into what I call that Christian bullshit, right? First off, the magicalness of being pro-social, I'm just not with it. This idea that Jesus was this miraculous figure, and the evidence of his miraculousness was, he hung out with prostitutes and tax collectors, and, he wouldn't stone a woman to death. He was generally just a decent human being. Like, again, being a decent human being is what I expect from anybody who wants to be considered a decent human being. I don't really think it's evidence that you're God or have magical powers that you're a decent human being. And I think it's anti-human to say that. But the larger problem is when we, in Christians out there that hear this, congratulations for sticking with it. But, we have a saying, there is no hate quite like Christian love.
Oh my!
And so what that shows you is we, especially marginalized people, we experience the world through the lens of hate and oppression, and that is what's given us by Christians, but it is called love. And this is where the brainwashing comes in, because just because you call something love doesn't make it love. And then Jesus is guilty of this, because again, like Christians love to say love and love, loving, loving, love, loving, love. Jesus, New Testament, New Covenant, when Jesus actually said that not one jot or tittle of the law shall be broken. So Jesus himself is a propagandist for this hateful, vile God, and Jesus himself is not on some lovey-dovey, New Testament covenant of grace type of shit. He's on some apocalyptic, when God comes, and it's gonna be an ugly mess. But he sells that to these peasant suckers because that's what he was doing. He was selling that to some peasant suckers as, oh, we're just humble and we're we just stay to ourselves. By the way, we don't also work. We don't contribute to society. We've abandoned any notion of having real jobs, and now we're beggars, and we just need people to provide for us and house us and give us food and okay. And then he's convincing them that this is actually an act of radical grace and radical love, and you're somehow bucking the system and all this type of stuff, when really he's just feeding into the fascistic religious mores of his time. So again, that is the problem. And so it is I do think they're being sincere, but that doesn't mean that what they're being sincere about isn't completely delusional, right? And so that's the problem. And then it causes us to be totally politically inept, because literally we're stuck in a world where on one side, the Republicans, the conservatives, they are just a complete right-wing, white supremacist, nationalist movement, and they always have been. Let's not act like this whole Trump thing is news. It's just evolution. It's just the natural development and progression of something. Turn. Yeah, it's his turn, and they're just going to keep on this path for forever, basically, because that's just who they are fundamentally. And then the other side, the Democrats are basically the Washington Generals. They're basically paid to lose. And why is that? Because they're so steeped in the same cultural ethos and the same mythology that they're all literally also Christians themselves. So they themselves are supporters of a Christo-fascist democratic experiment. And their solution is to love their enemies and play by the rules and to keep having compassion, right? And they always want to brag about how friendly they are with the conservatives and how much they love them and how much they enjoy having lunch with them and how much they go to the same schools and they worship at the same churches and all of that stuff. And so again, we can't have opposition because literally people in this country don't know what opposition means, and they don't know how to recognize hate and understand that I don't care if these people call the hateful shit they do love. That isn't going to make it love. I'm a grown adult. I know what love is. Love doesn't involve pain. When you're trying to hurt me and people like me and my homies, that is called hate. And you could call it love, 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 but then you're going to get up on a stance and do whatever. So yeah, that's where I'm at with that. Is I do think these people are being sincere, but that's exactly why they suck at this.
Well, I'll tell you, I had lunch with my brother yesterday, and he and I are on. He's a devout Christian. He's a pretty good example, although not a perfect one, and he'd tell you the same of what Christians are called to be. He and I often politically come at things from an opposite perspective. And what I have yet to say to him, and I'm gonna do this, I'll let you all know how it works out. Did you form this opinion on your own, or did your pastor tell you this? Is this conclusion you come to a result? I'm phrasing it a different way. Is this conclusion you come to a result of your own careful study, or simply something a minister said that made you angry? Because how we come by our opinions often influences how strong those opinions are. One weakness of modern society is people don't have the courage to say, I don't yet fully understand. I don't fully know. Um, I go to breakfast with a group of friends on Sundays, and there was someone who I hadn't met there. Her job is a charge nurse. I've been hearing this term for years. I've been hospitalized multiple times. I didn't know what the heck a charge nurse was. So instead of pretending like I knew what a charge nurse was, I asked her, can you tell me what a charge nurse is and does? Right? More people ought to approach social issues in that way. Hey, I don't fully understand this. I've heard of this term. Can you give me a brief introduction to it? What does it mean? What does this person do? How does this process work? How is a law made? How do I get registered to vote? How do I learn more about what's going on in my community? Things like that. How, rather than, hey, I like this guy, he makes me laugh, and I'm going to accept everything he says as my opinion, and I'm not going to fact check shit because I don't really need to, because the funny guy says it's true, and that's good enough for me.
Yeah,
That's
that's because
kind
a
of where
lot of
we
times
are in
they're
American
looking to
society.
be they're looking
Or
to
the
be
angry
a
guy, not necessarily funny.
they're looking to be an effective advocate for something they were already committed to, rather than learning. So we got this. I don't want to keep overlooking the super chat we have from Z Core Alpha. Super chat 9.99. Thank you so much. Very
Yeah,
generous.
thank you.
Are we all under God? Respect. And I would say, yeah, that's my frustration. That is the feeling I have, is that I live under this state of perpetual religious dominion, and it's all a bunch of bullshit. But none of the grown adults in the room have the audacity to just say, hey, all this is fake and we really ought to just leave it alone. And literally, we are watching the world burn as a result of our inability to do so. And I am of the opinion, the quite unpopular opinion throughout these spaces, that actually fighting against religion is the most important struggle of our day. And it is the most central linchpin. And it is the one thing that, if we actually were to confront and fight, would be the fastest way to achieve all of our other societal goals. This is the thing that is preventing us from having nice things. This is why we can't have nice things. So, yeah, I'm all about just it's over. It's over. It's very clear all this stuff isn't true. We're at a point where we have overwhelming evidence that there's just no reason to believe any supernatural claims. So yeah, the jig is kind of up, but we don't have the audacity to tell people. That's my take on things.
For Z Corp Alpha, I don't know whether you're being ironic in what you say. I personally don't have the luxury of believing a lot of what the Bible says, or just not having read it and believing all of what the Bible says, even though I have no clue what's in there. I have read the Bible multiple times. I know what's in there. One does not have to go beyond Genesis 1:6, where it says that God built a metal sky dome, right, to separate the waters above the firmament, that's the metal sky dome, from the waters below it. That just isn't true. Now, if a foundational book of the Bible is wrong about the way the earth is, how much confidence can I have in the rest of it, right? I know that Mark chapter 16, verse 16 through 19, states that Christians can drink deadly poison and not be hurt. They can take up snakes and not be hurt. And they can lay hands on the sick and heal them, right? It says that. Um, but that isn't true, is it, right? Maybe you can get bitten by a snake and be okay. Please don't try. Maybe you can get a poisonous snake. Maybe you can get some poison, drink some poison and survive it. Please don't try that. Maybe you can be a medical professional, such as a nurse or a doctor or some sort of paramedic or fighter, police officer, some sort of first responder that does CPR and save someone's life. And that is a beautiful thing wherever you find it. But you aren't walking down the corridors of
I'm sorry,
hospitals
but as a
laying hands
scientist,
on sick people and releasing them.
I'm gonna say I don't want you to mess around with, say, a snake so poisonous that it can kill you. But maybe if there's a snake that
Maybe it
it's
won't.
like the venom is just like, let's say it's in like the extreme bug bite territory, I say you go for it, because this is the problem with
No.
this silly, because but
Okay.
no, because well, my point is, that's the problem with this silliness. If somebody were to tell me okay, that I could do a spell or I could do the whatever, I got this cream you could rub or whatever, and it's gonna make you immune to snake poison, okay? Like if I saw that on a commercial, like I want some evidence. Even commercials know to lie to us a little bit about some evidence, right? You know, this thing can lead to remission in 4 months. Okay, why would you say that? Like, why would you come on my television and tell me Triprexa, okay, can lead to, you know, remission of my eczema for 6 months or whatever? Like, it is right for me to say to somebody, well, I want to see somebody else. You should be able to show me a person who has eczema, who took this Triprexa that I just made up, okay, and 6 months later they ain't got no eczema no more. Now most drug companies are gonna be like, yeah, we did this study here because we wanted to sell this and make a lot of money. So we first did this thing called a clinical trial. Yeah, so we did this thing called a clinical trial with a double-blind study, and yeah, it wasn't always, you know, we were trying to sell product, you know what I mean? Sometimes it was more 7 or 8 months, but definitely people, you know, had a significant reduction in their symptoms, right? That's what we'd expect. So if you're going to talk about it, be about it. If you're going to tell me you believe what's in this book, then show me you believe what's in this book. And if you don't want to do the snake thing and you don't want the poison because of the bites and the ouches and the hurts and all of that, there's things you can do that aren't painful. You know, go to the hospital and put them doctors out of work, because Jesus healed the sick and he raised people from the dead. And you know, it was a real problem. So he took care of it, he handled it, and he said, you shall do greater things than these. He said, you shall do greater things than these. So look, the economy is tough. People are going broke over medical expenses. Get up in that hospital and put them doctors out of work today. And if you're not going to, then shut up about the Bible. Shut up about the Bible.
I'm not a big proponent of telling people that. Certainly, if you do possess those powers, we need you, right? We need you. But people simply don't, and we know that. And to some degree, I wonder. Oh, you got to see the movie Memento. Is there a certain amount of game playing that's going on, to where the person knows this really isn't the case? However, I love being around these people in this room every Sunday, and some of them I love to go have lunch with or go hang out with or do this or that with, and we're all great friends. I'm glad we have our church meeting in common, and we have our faith in common.
PC is a lawyer. Look, PC said I can read. She said it says shall. It says shall take, not can, not might. It says shall. You know, that's that important.
So is that how we know? Important language. All right, Crystal. Okay, so Crystal, is this an identifier? And if I don't see it, this is their credential, right? If I don't see that, I shouldn't consider that person a credentialed believer. Is that your take?
Look, we're just saying that at some point this stuff is really not that complicated. It kind of just says what it says, and to your point, it's not a credible book. And again, like, y'all, this is what's crazy about all this. First off, people just don't respect the existence of former believers. Former believers are just, we're not even considered. If you think about it, we're kind of in like a low form of atheist. Like, it's really, yeah, they really want to just pretend like we're not even on the planet. But y'all, we're just telling the truth. Like, when I say something like that, the Bible is not a reliable, but it's not. It's demonstrably just not a reliable book. It you know, it's literally to the point where we only believe things that it contains if we can verify it elsewhere. Like, that's its credibility. We don't believe anything in it. With none of the names, nothing it says about inheritance, not any of its geography, nothing it says about world history. We don't believe a single thing up in there until it's externally verified using, because again, it just can't even be considered like an account, because that's how wildly off it is on most things. Pretty terrible. All right, let's let her roll a little bit, because we can't be here all
You have a
afternoon. I
special
got places to
obligation
go.
to make sure that you are using your political power to get your party to not fucking black people. Let's move on. In Louisiana, there have been multiple federal efforts that were ended. According to the report, the Justice Department lawsuit against a corporation that was accused of basically giving black people cancer. Basically giving black people cancer. Because remember when I talked before about regulations and how regulations are just a multisyllabic word for rules, and rules were designed to tell corporations, you can't just throw your trash up in the air and spew it all in the air and spew your toxic fumes. You can't just spew your toxicity into the local rivers and then bury it in the ground, because that's going to poison the people. The reason that corporations are not allowed to do that is because of regulations. But what is the one thing that Republicans don't like? Regulations. And so they've gotten rid of a number of the rules that would have kept these corporations in check, to the extent that those rules were even effective. And frankly, there's a lot of in the history to suggest that they weren't even as effective as they needed to be. But basically, that corporation, don't you worry, you are going to be able to poison as many black people as you want with all your cancer-causing chemicals, thanks to the Republicans and Donald Trump. The designation of an area that was a national historic landmark to limit industrialization, that's done. So you go ahead and industrialize the hell out of those communities. Damn, those black people, they should just move. I don't know where they're going to move to, but it's not going to be next to the whites. Let's figure it out. According to the report, grants from the Environmental Protection Agency to support mounting air quality in Cancer Alley, which I had recently mentioned, which is not like a little alley. And I talk more about this in the podcast that's coming out later today at 2:00. Cancer Alley, we tend to think of as like an alley. It's 80 miles long. It's an 80-mile stretch of primarily black towns and black villages that were devastated by industrial pollution. And thanks to the Republicans and Donald Trump, who are engaging in white supremacist political realities, they're not going to get the relief that the Democrats had promised them before, because not enough people voted for the Democrats to continue to stay in power. Let's call it what it is. Elections have consequences. And apparently for black people, those consequences mean exposure to early cancer. Thanks, Republicans, and thanks to all you voters who stayed home. Oh, aren't you proud of yourself? Now, Trump administration has said that these changes are necessary because we have to curb government spending. Officials have also linked some Biden-era climate programs to diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives that President Donald Trump and his top aides have said amount to illegal discrimination. Yes, because apparently cleaning the dirt that white corporations, or the poisons that white corporations have spewed into the planet, that's pro-black. So I guess we can all die in the name of owning the libs and owning the blacks. I don't know. But according to Jen Dugan, who is the executive director of the Environmental Integrity Project, she says that old and crumbling infrastructure in these southern communities that should keep everyone safe and healthy, it's not going to be repaired or upgraded. This is incredibly cruel, and it is lazy, lazy for the Trump administration to destroy and tear down these programs. Now, if you go to the article, you will be able to see a graph and a chart that really explain to you the nature of these programs, the wide reach that they were going to have. And these were programs that the Democrats had forced into existence. These are programs that the Democrats had funded that are now no longer going to be funded. So you know how people are like, they both sides, two wings on the same bird. This don't feel the same. This don't feel the same at all. There were nearly 24 climate justice programs that Donald Trump ended. Some of the federal notices that were canceled all have that kind of diversity, equity, and inclusion language in them. And so apparently cleaning the earth is now anti-white. So this is where we're at. But I talk much more about this in the podcast episode, which again will be out later, including some additional article references and some clips. But we also learned that in additional anti-black news stemming from these United States government, the U.S. Embassy in Nigeria has been engaging in this effort to revoke visas from Nigerians in a way that has left a lot of them stranded. Now, you may, as I do, you may know that Nigerians have a reputation for being among the smartest immigrants in the United States. They tend to have some of the most degrees, some of the most scientifically driven degrees, and out of the entire continent of Africa, as it pertains to immigrants who are here in these United States, it is often considered, Nigerians are often considered among the most educated when it comes to degrees and baccalaureate and post-baccalaureate programs. And I don't know if that has anything to do with why America is upset right now. I have another theory, which we'll get to in just a minute. But basically, Nigerians are finding themselves at the airport or living abroad, having had visas issued to them months ago, years ago, and basically finding out kind of like on the low that, hey, your visa is no longer good. There are people who had gone to airports. They had business trips. They weren't even planning to come and stay. They had business meetings, international affairs, and some of them are government officials. Finding their visas have been snatched. Now, I'm just going to say, in this time of great travail, it is not lost on me.
This shit is so overwhelming. Oh my God.
Is purging this country of migrants who are not white. This country is getting
I gotta just say that, like, this is just so, and I was trying to explain this to my students. it is just so exhausting to live through a time. And let me say this, because this is something people, I don't think people understand. First off, there's always been, it's always been a crisis. It's always been a crisis. If it wasn't a crisis to you in the past, it just, that's all it means. It just wasn't a crisis to you. Either you were too young to recognize how bad things were, or maybe you grew up in a situation where there was enough that whatever was really really bad at the time just didn't impact you, or of course you're having some lens on history and so you're comparing time periods. So these things have always been happening. But also, the takeaway is you deserve the urgency of your lifetime. We only have one life. That is an incredible humanist value to me, that we all have that great equality of one human life. And that means your life is not inherently more valuable than anybody else, but it also isn't inherently less valuable than anybody else. That means people in the past were not more deserving of a fulfilling life, and people in the future are not more deserving than you. And so that means we have every ethical right to advocate for ourselves. And it is just so exhausting to live in a world where people in power are just so blatantly moving to strip us of everything, to take us back in time, to make our lives difficult and miserable. And then everybody else acts like they don't see it, and just doesn't really ever get to the point of finally saying, you know what, fuck it, we just got to do what we got to do, and yeah, we're gonna crack a few eggs, we're gonna hurt a lot of people's feelings, but too fucking bad, they made themselves the enemies of humanity, so it is what it is. It just feels so regressive, and I don't know what it's gonna take for people to really just say enough is enough. We're not gonna fucking let these people destroy our lives. Ugh.
I think one of the keys to making society, American society, maybe all societies a better place, is diversity. A person can hear, and man, I've been this black dude so many times. You're talking to someone who has never had exposure to someone like you, and they may have been taught that people like you were bad. And someone who taught them that may have said all and not been honest about as many of, in percentage wise, of them are bad as there are percentages of us, whoever that group is, are bad, right? They don't make it even. They don't hold up the mirror to look at their own. I wish that people in this society and others had enough maturity to not even need to be told that, to not even need to be told that it is not all, it is not most. There are some. Can't put a precise number on it. There are some who would do you harm in that group. That's true. But there are some who would do you harm in our group too.
But that's my thing is though. But
Instead of, well, hold on, let me finish.
go ahead.
Instead of vilifying an entire group, right? An entire part of the an entire subculture, instead of vilifying them, be bold enough to say, this is a problem we have in our society, whatever that is, right? Violence. This is an issue we have in our society. You don't know where it's coming from. There are people who have more than you that will threaten you with violence. People who have less than you will threaten you with violence or try to control you, right? That's always going to happen. So let me teach you how to be aware of such people so that you can avoid those types of people. And maybe even you might want to become someone who fights that injustice when you see it. Or if you're really brilliant, you come up with a way to educate people in such a manner that those problems develop in fewer people. We had that conversation about school shootings this morning. What's the root cause? That's
But see,
hard.
my thing is that is what I find so exhausting, because to me this is where I'm talking to grown ass harmful people like children, and I'm tired of thinking about them. At the end of the day, I don't really give a shit why they are there. You know, I even as an educator, I have to really check myself and try to be candid with my students, because it's work for me to have a sociological perspective. It's work for me to try to think like an anthropologist. And we do so much of that in this space where we're so analytical and we're also humanist, so we're so empathetic and we're so sympathetic. And so we just spend so much of our energy humanizing these monsters in so we can understand them, and then so that, you know, when we're talking to them we can really like appeal to their better nature, and though we can understand them as like sincere but mistaken if they were told this thing, and it's just and my thing is, no, we should be able to say fuck you, you're an asshole. And then they start whining about you named. Listen. No, look, you're on the wrong side of history. You're with the racist. You're with the wrong people. Fuck you, you're an asshole. And honestly, I don't even want to be friends anymore, because I'm just tired of it. I tried to have rational conversations with y'all about this. You don't really want to be rational. Quite frankly, you're like all sold out to your little cult. So I'm gonna leave you over there. Have at it. I'm gonna go over here and take care of my people. Catch you on the flip side. That's the timing that I want to be on, because I'm tired, because again, the game, like we got into before, it was always a game. They were never being sincere. The game's always been about maintaining the status quo. That status quo is always going to be white supremacist and misogynist and patriarchal and all of the blase and the flavonoids. So I'm just done with it. And I'm and all of it, because the other thing is, here's the thing that you got to understand, that like I understand about, for instance, like my family. Motherfuckers have chosen ignorance. Let me be very clear about that. Motherfuckers have chosen ignorance, and a lot of that, a lot of it is just poor character. Quite frankly, a lot of people, some of it I do put on the educational system, but a lot of people, let's just put it this way, they didn't really like school, they didn't really do well in school, they didn't really apply themselves, and they've been antagonistic towards learning ever since. Okay, and the truth is, a lot of these people, they could have had different opportunities. They could have been a certain type, and so even now they hate it. They hate reading. They don't, you know. And it's like you gotta let a person at some point. I don't know where the line is, but at some point everybody transitions from being the victim of circumstance, because we are all born and bred and raised in circumstances that are beyond our control. None of us can pick what circumstances we're born into, and largely we don't even control our own lives until we become adults. But at some point into that adulthood, and for me, I don't know exactly where it is, but I'll tell you what I do know. I do know, based on the analytics and stuff, that most of our audience is grown. That's why I have a certain tone with our audience, because it is grown. It is even grown compared to, like, I'll tell you this, like, part of the reason I like teaching in higher education is because my students are adults, they're not children, right? There are certain things you just have to carry yourself and teach very differently when you are taking responsibility over minors, right? Versus when you can assume by and large. There are some high school dual enrollment, but for the most part, you can assume your students are adults. You can have a very different type of conversation, very different pedagogy. The whole thing's different because we're all adults here, right? I know in this YouTube kind of space we're in, because this is not what the kids do, right? The kids don't pop up online and go to atheist versus Christian conversations, okay? This is something only grown folks do. So most of our community is 25 plus, right? Most of us, I would think, if you're in this community, even if you're in your early 30s, we probably consider you one of the young folk. And this, right? So what am I saying that? Because at some point, these people are just responsible, right? We all know this. There gets to a point in life where it may not be your fault, but it is your responsibility, right? I really don't think it's my fault that I am no longer employed by my previous employer, okay? But I am nevertheless the person has to figure out how to keep a roof over my head, and it's been a real struggle, right? It may not be my fault, but it is my responsibility, right? And that's the way so many things in life are. And we just have to come to our understanding that this is what it means to be an adult. So I get that a lot of the reasons people are racist, conservative, Christian, whatever it is that they are, is not their fault. But at this point, they are agents of that thing. They are perpetuating that thing. They are grown adults living as that thing. And now they're going to have to face the consequences because it's their responsibility. And it just is extremely exhausting to have to continue to take responsibility for their bad behavior, because that's effectively what we do is when we have those conversations, we say, well, they're just so misguided or so ignorant, or, you know, they're such the unfortunate victim of circumstance that it's now our responsibility to understand them in such a way that now we can both be the adults for us and advocates for ourselves, and also have to compensate for their inability to show up in society as a fully functioning adult. And it's just, it's tiring, and it's very, especially because, again, we're being oppressed. We're dealing with our own crap, right? And a lot of times our lives we're going through trials and tribulations. See what I'm saying? And now I have the American obsession with oppressing Black people to deal with on top of my own personal circumstances. And now on top of that, I got to deal with the fact that the people putting those people in power, voting for them, supporting for them, capping for them on the internet and all this other stuff are acting like they don't see what's going on. And then I got to deal with the fact that the liberals don't know what's going on, and the Democrats are voting for Charlie Kirk Day, and the atheists are saying all of this is really about a difference of opinion, and I really just wish he was still here because I was going to change his mind. And it's just like, who can I run to? I want to sound like the RBs, but who can I run to share this despair? Who can I run to when I need love? Okay, shout out to the work adventure gang. You know, this is my community, this is my crew, these are my friends. So that's really my support system. But, you know, beyond this community and beyond my friends, dealing with the world is very hard right now, y'all. Times are rough. I'm gonna give her a couple more minutes, and then we're gonna have to come back to her in a part two. She's really dropped a lot on. It's a very interesting video, but yeah, there's a lot to get through. Oh my goodness.
Getting rid of migrants or immigrants who are Black, who are Latino, they're getting rid of everybody brown. The only people that's gonna be left here, if they get their way, the only people that's gonna be left here are the white nationalists, the handful of righteous whites that haven't decided to just go to Canada because I can't take it anymore, and the indigenous, what indigenous communities exist, and us, Black people. I'm just going to say this is probably not the best time to be engaging in proactive amplification of diaspora wars, because there may come a time, as somebody who spent a significant portion of my childhood in Germany, I was born in Germany, I did not live my whole childhood in Germany, but spent a significant portion of my childhood in Germany, having studied refugee realities. It would be really foolish of us in this moment, strategically, even if you're only thinking in your own self-interest selfishly, but strategically, this is the wrong time to be making enemies among people with whom you might have way more in common than you don't. I'm gonna just say that, but I also think it's really interesting because I'm aware of this growing frustration among European countries with African countries. Have you guys been paying attention to this? Mali nationalized a number of they're nationalizing their gold, as is Burkina Faso. There are a number of nations, African nations, that are nationalizing their resources. Now, when I say nationalizing their resources, what that means is they are telling the foreign corporations that have set up shop in their countries, the gold mining, the diamond mining, the cocoa mining, I don't think you mine cocoa, but the cocoa harvesting, they are telling European nations, you're not going to be able to send your corporations here and take all of our natural resources, extract them, and then send them back to Europe where you guys make goo-goo gobs of money and you leave Africans with nothing. And I want you to take a listen to this clip by Vic Mensa. And in fact, YouTube, you guys are going to be able to see this clip by Vic Mensa. But he talks a little bit about this in a way that I think is kind of, I mean, he's kind of dope. Like, I like how he does this. But I want you all to take a listen to this clip because, and I don't know that this is what's happening with Nigeria. I don't think we've seen a similar proactive effort to nationalize resources and to take them back from countries like France.
Okay, we're gonna close on this because this is crazy. She's not even gotten into this book yet, so we're gonna do a part 2 because when she gets into this book, y'all, I promise you, the stuff is gonna get deep. But I appreciate this, and I kind of appreciate what she's done for us because all of this is setting the stage, y'all. It's setting the stage for this conversation that we have to have about the operation of Black Christianity within the context of a white Christian nationalist America. And of course, I think it's even going to be challenging to her because she's coming at this apparently as a Black Christian or Black spiritual person. And so I'm gonna have an even different level critique than she has, of course, with me and my one Black friend here. But I will say this. One, she's kind of ending us on a very powerful note, which is really thinking about the exploitation that continues to go on. And it largely continues to go on with the white Christian world and Asia and China's in this as well, continuing to exploit African people. And this is one of the reasons I'm very against the current religious practices, because they reinforce the missionary zeal that leads to this exploitation. It's almost like they're the prospectors. It's like you send in the missionaries first, right? And that's what softens the people up, and to eventually let these sort of capitalists come in. But AR talked about this idea of, people thinking that they were going to change Charlie Kirk's mind and how that was delusional because that would have cost him a lot of money. I think this is part of, again, the game that my one Black friend referred to earlier, and my thinking about how that game has only ever served a certain interest. Because to me, that has been part of the sport. Part of the game has been largely white liberals or white leftists or white secular people engaged in these sort of fruitless, meaningless engagements with the other side. And it's always been about, well, I have to do that because I'm going to change their minds. 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 And if I'm not, well, it's for the audience. Well, it's not about them. It's for the audience. I'm going to change the audience's mind. No. First off, you're not going to change their minds. You know that's not going to happen. Second of all, the audience, there's no audience. They're all like me. Like I know Christians don't watch this show. So every once in a while, we could throw a bone out there or an acknowledgement to Christian viewers or Christian audience. But I know I'm not stupid enough to think that my audience it contains a lot of believers. Now, I would love it if it did, but if they're here because they want the real stuff, and they're here because they appreciate us giving us back to them legitimately, right? And so they can make content with the awareness that, hey, maybe once in a while they show up, or maybe in the future we become really popular and they go back and they see some of this stuff or whatever, right? But you just got to be realistic about who's in the audience. And so to me, that's always been a fool's errand too, because most of the people in the audience are already committed to one side or the other, and they're probably even less likely to change their mind than the person you're having the engagement with. But the bigger problem is that they don't realize that they're just enabling our oppressors. Because again, they're the type you're going to get into your conversation with your Cliff Connectley, you're going to get into the conversation with your Charlie Kirks or whatever, and you don't even realize apparently just how bigoted and racist and prejudiced and problematic and oppressive these people are. And if you do, you don't have the audacity to actually call it out. So what you do instead is you engage in these dumbass debates about public policy or philosophy or the Bible or whatever the fuck it is. And all that does is legitimize that this is a difference of opinion or a difference of perspective, and we're going to talk it out. And who asked you to do that? You know, nobody in no marginalized community has ever reached out to one of these white liberals and said, "Hey, I need you to go debate this right-wing fascist for me. Yeah, I need you to hop up on his YouTube and let him have it, because they're hurting us right now, and we need y'all to show up and get your pen and paper and come on." So the other problem is that is what you put all of your energy into instead of actually opposing those people and moving in solidarity with marginalized groups. Because if you ask me, that is what I'm going to ask you to do. I'm going to say, fuck those people. And then I'm going to say, actually spend your time and energy, you know, doing some stuff that's actually going to help the people that you claim to care more about. And don't engage with all that. And a lot of times it feels like people are just avoiding that. Like a lot of times, I hate to say this, I see a lot of stuff from white folks on the internet. I'm just being honest, I mostly see it from, although black people do it too. But you know, you just when you see certain things, you kind of, you know, we see them through our own filters, right? And so a lot of times what I see people so into their pets. You know, these people who like their whole channels about their pets, and they got millions of subscribers, and they're spending all this type of money on these pets. And I go, damn, these people must really hate black people. Like, because I think like, and because I always think people like this, a lot of times I see them, they live, you know, you can tell by where they live and stuff like that. Ain't too many of us in their social circle, ain't too many of us in their neighborhoods and stuff like that. And it feels like, come on, like, y'all, help people. People need your help, and people need help. And that help for people could really use a lot of resources. And so I just feel like it's so commonplace for people to skip right over all of the marginalized groups you could be helping, and instead they're about to drop a cool $500,000 a year to take care of these dogs. And don't get me wrong, I'm a dog person and I love dogs. I love dogs, but I just want to see, do those same people have that same energy and that same willingness to spend resources to help actual human beings in need? And if not, that's something we should be questioning. And look, I ain't talking about you. If you got your own little menagerie of animals and you're moving in solidarity or whatever, I ain't talking about you. And if you just got a normal dog or two and they live a normal pet existence, and they're on the hierarchy in your life, but they're below other people because you understand the difference. I'm not talking to y'all. But I'm just saying it gets to a point to me where it gets weird. And to relate that back to this topic, right? this is a lot of how I see people moving in leftist liberal spaces. Like you want to be on the right side of history, but you are willing to do anything other than what you are actually asked to do to help. Like for a lot of people, it was, hey, y'all needed to vote for that black woman. I'm sorry, but y'all needed to vote. Y'all needed to vote for that black woman. And people were doing all types of flips in jujitsu, and all of a sudden they were principled leftists, and all of a sudden the Gaza was too much, and all of a sudden both sides were the same, and all of a sudden they had to speak to the Trumpists in their own language, and we had to reach across the aisle, and all of a sudden people started getting real red. I was like, y'all doing the whole lot. You're doing the most. You were asked to do something very simple. You have two choices. You have choice A, which is shit. And you have choice B, which is qualified. You had dog shit versus qualified. All you had to do was make a very simple choice. But people was doing the most. They was doing the kung fu and the jujitsu, and they was learning new types of hobbies and all stuff instead of doing what they were asked to do. So that's all I'm speaking to, y'all. That's all I'm speaking to. We have to really start to check people with, like, how are you really moving? And what does it really say about you? Because a lot of these people are weird. That's all I'm going to say. So I'm going to say they're weird.
Some people just love their pet. They do not have children. It has nothing to do with human beings aren't as good as dogs. They may have tried to find the right human being for them, and that didn't pan out too well. But they got their little dog, which is nothing but love and licks.
I'm not coming for them. I'm not coming for them.
That's a lot of these people who will spend thousands of dollars on their dog are those people.
Yeah,
other human beings fail to be as loving as their beloved cats, their birds, their dogs, their turtles, their whatever.
But that's also always been a thing, right? There's always been sort of it's a running joke in the black community, sort of that white people care more about their dogs, that they love dogs more than they love black people. You know, look.
I've never heard this joke. That doesn't mean
you've never heard this?
No, I've never heard this.
Oh yeah, it's everything from how much more willing they are to share a sandwich. A lot of them don't want to share a sandwich with us, or they share a sandwich with us. They're gonna go in the kitchen. They're gonna get a knife. They're gonna cut the sandwich in half, right? And then they're gonna like give us the half of the sandwich. But the dog, a lot of them will just have the dog bite. They just had the dog bite the sandwich, and then they'll just eat the sandwich right after the dog ate it. So you know, Nancy Mace don't care. You know, a lot of people. But when that woman shot that dog, oh my goodness, people lost their minds. So
pocket locker. Instead, you're now a sociology teacher. That's a great experiment. You put that on, have your class do that as a hidden camera experiment and put that on YouTube. See what you find your own 200 people and do your own study and publicize it, put your name on it, or put your class's name on it, what have you, and you publicize that. That, right? You know, it's because for one news cycle, that'll be the talk. That'll open people's eyes. Only for a week.
Yeah, right. Just that would be fun. But yeah, no, that's why I brought that up, because it's kind of it's kind of a running joke in black spaces about how that they're far more concerned about their dogs than us. And so I'm teasing. Like I said, I'm a dog person. I love dogs, and yes, I would definitely spend more on my dog than to help strangers and people I don't know. People consider their dog to be their part of their family or the only family they have. But the point is, at some point, it does get to like, wow, that's a lot. Like, you're doing a lot for these dogs. And like I said, you just hope they have the same energy for helping people who are less fortunate they are. And many of them do, right? Many people do. Many people take great care of pets, and they also volunteer at the soup kitchen, and they, try to support the people that are less fortunate, and they do all the good people things. So yeah, I'm not coming. It's just part of the joke of, at some point it's like, damn, like we could use some help, right? And you do wonder about people when they just seem to avoid helping. That's more my point. And it's really more to say that I think for a lot of people in liberal spaces, a lot of what I see going on in atheist spaces, is it does feel like people are willing to do everything but confront these people. So for instance, what I see from counter apologists, especially the white liberal counter apologists, who have huge channels. They get mainstream media opportunities. They get mainstream news coverage. They're making presumably a lot of money doing this. They definitely don't have to do anything else to make ends meet, and they seem to be doing quite well for themselves. They rarely even go into issues of marginalization. They rarely even discuss things that might be even considered quote unquote social or political issues. A lot of them grandstand and make that a huge part of their brand, right? Is that they refuse to go there. So then all of your content is then about the philosophy nonsense or the arguments or the the content of theology and all this stuff. And then they go into these spaces, and that's their ambition. Then their ambition becomes to deal with these larger apologists. Their ambition is to, get in front of a Cliff or Stuart Connectly. Their ambition is to be on Piers Morgan or to have a sit down with Frank Turek or Josh McDowell or whatever, Sean McDowell. And then when they do those type of things, they're not going to sit there and confront Sean McDowell about the fact that the type of theology and religious dogma that he's pushing is harmful to trans people. They're not going to confront Cliff. If they have the conversation with Cliff Connectly, the conversation is going to be like, does the Bible endorse slavery? Which is a stupid conversation. It contains a handbook for slavery, right?
Literally.
But we're gonna have this dumbass conversation about does it endorse slavery instead of saying, forget a conversation about does the Bible endorse slavery. How about the fact that Black Americans are deeply Christian as a result of Christian indoctrination during their enslavement? Let's talk about that, right? Because that is something that if there's Cliff's audience or Christians watching or whatever, is going to be like, right? That's going to be when you punch them in the face and you give them something. Now they got to really think about something uncomfortable. Now they got to really think about the real history. These people never go there. And so all they do is engage in these silly conversations. And then it seems to be that it's really all about growing their channels, clicks and views, getting more exposure so they can leverage it and so they can monetize it, which then again feels like they're exploiting us. And yeah, every time we complain and whine, they show up and, hey, I'm an ally and I'm not one of the bad ones and I would never use the N-word and I love you guys. You guys are my friends. But then when you move amongst our enemy, you don't actually oppose them or bring our issues to bear. So then it just literally feels like you're a grifter who's exploiting us. So this is my frustration, because I'm seeing them do everything but what they are asked to do. I'm seeing them do the backflips, and again, they're investing in these dogs. They want to buddy and brag about being friends with these dogs. But what are you doing for the people in your community that actually watch you and support you and you claim to care about? What are you doing for those people? You're not doing anything near for these people what you are doing for those dogs over there on the other side. All right, that's my rant. Let's get it out of here. What are your closing thoughts, my one black friend? Because, we haven't said anything spicy today.
No, I look, we live in a very trying time. We do. And I think one of the best things you can do is call people on their BS. There are people who legitimately don't know they're BSing you because they've been brainwashed to think that their way is the proper way, and they're doing so with the best of intentions. They can still be wrong. And they may need you to, and I'm borrowing a term I heard, rescue them from that. Don't be ashamed to do it. Don't be afraid to do it. It may be the best thing that's ever happened to them. It may be precisely what they've needed, and they just didn't have a name for it, right? They didn't have a name for that feeling of being free from a bad ideology. Um, Another thing, I say this in meetings, I say this to employees, the best idea may come from you. Don't be afraid to speak up. Pocket lock.
Yeah, no, that's a great thought to end on. That's a great thought to end on. The best idea may come from you. Don't be afraid to speak up. All right, y'all, that's gonna do it for us. Thank you so much to everybody that was in chat. Thanks to the mods. Thanks to everybody that watches later. Please leave us a like and subscribe. Also, you can answer the question of the day, which is, do you think it's important that Americans confront the history of Black Christianity? So we'd love to hear from you in the comments about that if you're watching later. We do have a new virtual headquarters. Gather got rid of their free tier, so we've moved to a service called Work Adventure, but we're just going to call it the headquarters. So there's a link for that in the description if you want to check that out later. And you can also join our Discord. And finally, there's a link in the description to support Lina. Lina's just kind of going through it right now. And so if you've got a few dollars or know someone who does, feel free to donate or share that link broadly with anybody that might help. So thank you so much. We really appreciate all of that. And as always, be good to yourselves
and each other.
All right. We'll see you next time, gang. Said I'm gone.